One of the biggest mistakes I see people make that holds them back from building their best possible physique naturally is not understanding the best way to go about a massing phase, a bulking phase, or a cutting phase. And from not doing either or effectively or efficiently, they end up spinning their wheels for years later. And then they find out by year 5 that they actually could have made all the progress in those last 5 years in just the first year had they executed this properly. I'm going to walk you through not only how to properly mass so you can build a significant amount of muscle naturally month by month, how to properly cut so you retain all that muscle or even build some of the process of shedding all the body fat and revealing your results, but also how to know when you should do one or the other, when to stop, slow down, adjust, or if it's best to recomposition in some cases. Starting with the mass phase. Now keep in mind, you could call this a lean bulk, a lean gain, doesn't really matter for the sake of this video. We're calling it a mass phase. Now I actually made a video breaking down how I set up my entire mass phase, including training on top of nutrition. Okay, so I highly recommend you check that out. But to go over the basics of how we ensure a successful massing phase is going to start with the length of time that we're going to dedicate towards this surplus, okay? Now, you have to understand this, and if you don't, you're going to make the same mistake I did and the same mistake so many people are making today. If your body can only build so much muscle at a certain rate week to week, month to month, year to year, then by eating more or by gaining weight at a faster rate than that does not mean that you will gain more muscle. In fact, it only means that you're going to gain more fat, making the mass phase less effective, less efficient, and setting yourself up for a grueling cut that's going to come sooner. Therefore, again, going back to what I said at the beginning, spinning your wheels. So for that reason, a proper mass phase can't be too short, as you simply just won't build significant amounts of muscle to make a big difference. And we can't go too fast, no matter how long it is. The general point that I recommend a mass phase to be in to make it at least effective to some degree is 6 to 12 months. Now, you should only probably get closer to the 6-month period if you're somewhat new to this, or if you've just never really done a mass phase properly, it's good to at least try it out, perhaps with 6 months. Anything less than 6 months is not going to make a significant difference to your physique, and if you execute the cut improperly, might actually just have you losing whatever muscle you did build in that time. So for that reason, 6 to 12 months, typically closer to 12 months. I still have people that are at an advanced training age, or rather they've been working out a long time, that still get confused when I say I'm going on a 12-month massing phase, a 12-month surplus, because they're used to like a 3-month, a 4-month, a half-ass, they're not disciplined about it, whatever. Now, obviously, if you compete, then okay, there may be certain timelines you have to stick to, but if that timeline has you shortening your mass phase, then just understand that you're not really maximizing the difference between show to show. It might be in your best interest to project a competition or a photo shoot out into the future so that you have enough time under a surplus to be able to significantly change your physique for the next time you step on stage, the next time you have the photo shoot, etc. We're aiming for a certain rate of weight gain on a week-to-week basis, so we aren't necessarily aiming for a specific weight. Again, a mistake I made in the past was I would say, okay, this bulk, I'm going to 220. I go to 220. It doesn't really matter how fast I get there. And then I cut down, and then it's, okay, well, last bulk I hit 220. This bulk I'm hitting 230. So I would set the goal based on a weight. I didn't really care about how long it took, and I would just try to get to that weight. So I try to do it as quickly as possible, thinking that I'll just build the muscle as quickly as possible. A classic mistake. Now, what you have to understand is just shoot for a rate of weight gain, because if training is optimized, sleep is there, and your nutrition is covered, then you will be synthesizing muscle only to a certain extent based on training age and other factors on a week-to-week basis anyway, and that extent is not that big. So if we start gaining past 0.75 pounds per week, even if you're a beginner, a lot of that is going to end up being body fat. Keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that the second you go over 0.75 pounds 1 week, it's over, you fucked up the mass. That's not true. You can have that leeway sometimes, but if you start doing it consecutive weeks, it's time to tighten something up before you hit a stop loss, which I'm going to explain shortly. Now, in order to achieve somewhere between 0.25, which is about the pace I'm looking to gain at, or to 0.5, up to 0.75 pounds per week of weight gain, you're going to look at somewhere between a 200 to 300 calorie surplus. Again, a very moderate, a very conservative surplus to ensure that you've got enough resources to pack on the muscle from the stimulus of your training, but also ensuring that there's not too much that your body says, all right, thanks for all this, I guess I'm just storing the body fat. Here's something that people don't talk about, which is what I'm gonna call a stop loss. A stop loss is just a term I took from day trading and stock markets, etc. So basically a stop loss means we wanna have certain variables, certain things in place, as I do, to ensure that if these variables are hit or if you're approaching them, then you want to either take your foot off the gas, peel back a little bit, or even go into a complete mini cut, which I won't be covering in this video, by the way. But you aren't anywhere near finished your massing phase and you start to get close to these stop loss variables. For example, your waist starts to get to a certain limit that you're not comfortable with it being anymore because it ensures that you've gained too much body fat. That could be one. You're looking a little too smooth, a little too fat in the mirror, a little too rapidly. That could be another. The body fat scanner is telling you, if you're using that, oh, you've actually gained a significant amount of body mass, but not enough of that is lean mass to be warranted. Or perhaps your quality of training, your performance, your appetite, your quality of life, enjoyment is decreasing, okay? Because once you start getting really high up on those calories over constant periods of time, especially if you have high metabolism like myself, 4,500 calories every single day does start to get a little tiring. If you miss one meal, all of a sudden you find yourself cramming 2,000 calories near the end of your day. This starts to impact sleep. Your appetite starts to decrease. Performance in the gym isn't as good. Excitement for all of it isn't as good. This could be a stop loss, an indicator that it's time for a mini cut to resensitize, drop some fatigue, get your appetite back to where it needs to be, get more motivated, excited, and then continue the mass from there. So these stop losses are important to have in place, and if you don't understand how to measure this or you just don't have something to do so in the first place, then I would highly recommend my complete physique tracker that I offer for free. You can check it in the link in the description. And I just set this out there because it's what I use personally. I thought, hey, this is gonna help anybody that wants to build an incredible physique and maximize all this stuff. My physique tracker complete, you can install right away and get all these variables on track so you know when you need to manage and adjust things down the road. You can see predictable progress. Again, link for that is in the description if you want to check it out. That is going to be the overall basis of the mass phase to make it successful. As far as macros for how we want to go about the composition of those calories from the surplus, 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight is what I'm recommending. Now, the literature does show that as low as 0.6 grams should be fine, especially when in the surplus. However, if you go above 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is the upper threshold that the literature is showing is sufficient, well, it's not going to hurt your muscle gain at the very least. If anything, because we're eating excess calories, you're going to be getting a lot of your protein. It's going to show up on MyFitnessPal as protein, but it's going to be lower quality from all these carb and fat sources. So to make sure you're getting enough high quality protein, I would recommend that you could even overshoot this. And keep in mind, it's harder to build muscle than it is to sustain it. So for that reason, providing your body with the extra raw materials to build that muscle in accordance with the stimulus might be a good idea. It's worth doing, in my opinion. Next is fats. Fats are essential. I always just say 25%, give or take. It's case by case, depending on preference, on variables. What impacts one person hormonally may not impact the other. A safe place to be at for dietary fats is between 20 and 35%. So I just say start on the lower conservative end of that and see how you feel and adjust from there. The remaining calories will come from carbs. So yes, the vast majority of your calories will be carbs, which I believe is probably the most important factor when it comes to the bulk, not only to get those calories high, but also the fuel performance, which is of utmost importance to stimulate the growth maximally on a per set and per training basis so that you can use the extra protein or just the protein in general to build the muscle along with the proper rest. So that's what the macronutrient breakdown looks like. This is what a massing phase, these are the basic elements you need in place to make sure you don't overdo it, to make sure you're seeing progress at the right rate, and of course, couple it with the right training, okay? Now, who should do this? Well, I believe it's appropriate to actually go into a complete full massing phase if you're very lean. If you start a true massing phase and you aren't that lean, then you're just gonna get to the point where it becomes less and less effective and efficient a lot sooner. And so you're gonna be shortening your mass phase, falling into a cut, and if you don't cut down low enough again, another short mass phase. And now over the course of the last 18 months, you've done 2 mass phase for 6 months, split by a, let's say 6 months of cutting on either end of that. That's not ideal as opposed to 12 months of pure massing all the time and then one cut at the end. Okay, you spend more time in the surplus, that's ideal. So I always recommend starting the mass phase as lean as you can, but at a leanness that's still healthy to maintain at this slow rate. Okay, so what I believe that looks like is going to be somewhere around 10% for men and around 18 to 20% for women. 10 to 12% for men, 18 to 20% for women. You need to be pretty lean. Abs should be extremely visible, okay? You should have some veins going on, some lines, definition, all of that. As a woman, same thing, lots of definition, very tight waist. I believe that will set you up for the most optimal way to maximize your mass. And obviously, if you're skinny and a complete beginner, you haven't really ever done a mass or a cut or anything like this, then sure, you've got a very low body fat, but not all that much muscle. Mass phase is probably in your best interest. Now let's talk about cutting. So you've actually done your mass, or you're a complete beginner that needs to lose a significant amount of body fat first. That could be grounds for a full length cutting phase as well. What are the differences here? Actually, there aren't that many aside from the two obvious ones. Number one is a calorie deficit and the rate of weight loss versus weight gain that we're looking to see each time. So the rate of weight loss can be a lot faster than the rate of weight gain because, again, building muscle is much more difficult for the body to do and it takes a lot longer. However, fat loss, while maintaining muscle, should be a lot faster and is a lot easier for your body to accomplish. For that reason, 1% of your total body weight loss every single week is the most sustainable and healthy rate to lose body fat at, to ensure you're also either building or sustaining muscle at the very least while cutting. Now you can increase or decrease this rate by 0.5%. So you could lose at 1.5% of your total body weight on a week-to-week basis, but it really depends. It's really case by case, depends on how fast you want to go, the risk of losing muscle, what you're okay with there, hunger tolerance or lack thereof, and just preference for sacrifice and getting it done or whatever the case may be, or how much total weight you actually have to lose, how much total excess body fat you have to lose, will all depend on this, okay? Or this would rather depend all on those factors. But again, the general point will be about 1% body weight. This is a scalable range to go with, okay? Now for that, the calorie deficit you should be aiming for is somewhere between 250 and 500 calories on a day-to-day basis. That should help achieve this rate. If it doesn't, obviously you can adjust, you'll be monitoring it. Now for the stop losses, the reason we want to stop loss on the cutting phase is to make sure you're not going too fast. If you go too fast, fatigue is going to accumulate rapidly. You're going to feel this in the sense of very low energy, lack of focus, very foggy mind, right? Your performance in the gym is decreasing, you're constantly sore. And again, in general, very similar to the bulk, the quality of life is decreasing just for completely different reasons in this case. If that happens and your cut isn't anywhere near done yet, then those would be stop losses, i.e. fatigue, performance, health in general, mental health. You start having cravings like crazy. You start thinking about binging. You actually start binging. If these things start to happen, then it's a good stop loss, an indication that it's time to either finish the cut, which you'll know if you have, I'll talk about that here, or if it's just time to do a diet break. Now keep in mind, if you're near the very, very end of this full-length cut and you're getting very lean, you might start to experience some of this, in which case, fine. Maybe you can push it another week or two. But if you've got several weeks to go after that, or at least a few more weeks after another two, so let's say you've got 4+ weeks left in the cut and you're noticing these types of symptoms very acutely, then it's probably best to just take a 1-week diet break, dissipate the fatigue, get your energy and focus back up, get your recovery up, and be able to finish the cut strong instead, which also will help set you up for a proper mass after. So it's something to keep in mind. Now, what do I believe is the ideal body fat percentage? Now, keep in mind, body fat percentage isn't the best method of measurement because there's large margins of error when it comes to that. But again, if you were to search up or understand relatively what a body fat percentage should look like roughly for you, and understanding what being actually lean is from an objective side, for example, if somebody can only see the top 2 abs, that might feel like it's lean to one person, but objectively, it's not actually very lean. So objectively, getting somewhere around that 10% range for men where you've got a very defined six-pack is probably ideal in my opinion and my recommendation based on observation. Women, it's gonna look again around that 18% range, which as you remember, is what we mentioned is probably a good starting point for the mass. And that stands true. And so if you are still very far from this, then you're probably not done that cutting phase yet. And it's in your best interest, instead of just getting tired with the cutting phase and say, you know what, I'm done with the cutting, I want a mass already, keep pushing through that cut. Do a little diet break if you need, if the fatigue is there. Push through the cut, and if you can get this lean, it's going to set you up for 10 times more a successful, not 10 times more, but a significantly more successful massing phase thereafter. Now, as far as the macros go, I actually just recommend sticking to the same here. So by that very nature of the macro breakdown, the difference is going to be your carbs are going to be significantly lower because we're now in a deficit. Your calories are going to be lower, and the vast majority of those calories are coming from carbs. Your protein should be roughly the same. Again, we want a minimum 1 gram because now we're trying to retain muscle. So having 1 gram or slightly above, also the thermic effect of protein and the satiety effect of protein are 2 added bonuses for the cut. And fats, we don't want to decrease any lower, as this is an essential thing for hormonal profile, etc. Macros are similar. And when do you actually do a full length cut? I'll repeat, once the mass is actually done, time for a full length cut. Or if you're simply a beginner that needs to lose a ton of weight and just get yourself to a point where in which it's time to mass and actually build some muscle in the process, that's great. Because if you're a beginner and you do a full length cut, you can actually build muscle in that process anyways if you have optimized training. But speaking on that point, build muscle, lose fat at the same time. It is possible. It's called body recompositioning. However, it's very difficult to do unless you fall into one of these camps. A complete beginner that's overweight, for example. Now, a complete beginner that is very skinny can also technically recomp, but don't really have enough body fat for it to be noticeable. You're better off on the mass phase like I mentioned earlier. So complete beginner that's got a little bit excess weight, or you could say skinny fat. You got not that much muscle, it's kind of looking fat in some areas, a gut, whatever. Recomposition is for you. Or if you're detrained, you're coming off of an illness, an injury, or you simply stop training for a lengthy period of time to where muscle gains decrease, you gain some body fat, you'd be considered detrained. And I would recommend anybody that falls in that category to do a recomp before assessing what you should do here. So the purpose of a recomp is 4 to 8 weeks of staying around your maintenance calories. It could be somewhere above or below 250 depending on where you are right now and what you're comfortable with. But let's say a maintenance with about 1 gram per pound of body weight for your protein, about 25% towards fats, and the rest carbs. Maintenance calories are staying there. You're optimizing training and getting back to doing it consistently. You will now build muscle. The body fat that's burned will fuel the muscle gain as well. You're going to build it back relatively faster due to either being a complete beginner or from muscle memory. So after those 4 to 8 weeks, the purpose here is it's short, it gets the job done, it can significantly change your body comp, it'll build the right habits, and now you'll be able to properly assess, or you may be able to properly assess, which one of these two you should actually do now, right? So if you are still unsure for whatever reason, then just redo the recomp phase. It's not that big of a deal. But probably after 4 to 8 weeks of recomping, getting into the habit of things, optimizing your training, your sleep, your nutrition, etc., tracking your calories and getting ready, now you'll have a better idea. Are you falling within this range? Are you relatively lean? Good, mass phase. You're not exactly lean just yet, just do a cut. If you've got even just a few pounds to lose, or let's say 10 pounds to lose to get to this point, then great, a cut for a few weeks, there you go. You'll have better clarity after doing a recomp, but only if you fall into this camp. I hope that this makes sense. If you have any questions, be sure to comment below. And like I said, the only way to properly execute any and all of this, adjust appropriately, put the stop losses in place, and ensure predictable progress on either end of all of this is by tracking the right variables at the right times, at the right cadence. And my free complete physique tracking system is how I am able to do exactly that. And so I offer for free. And again, I recommend you pick it up if you don't have any way of tracking things, or the way you do track things isn't that intuitive, and you just want to install a system that will help you effortlessly start to achieve these things, implement the right stop losses, and so on. So check the link in our description for that. And as always, if you want to maximize your training, maximize your nutrition, or you want one-on-one coaching, you can check the links for that in my description below as well. Like I mentioned, any questions, comment them, and any other topics you want to see from me, make a whiteboard video or a different video, please let me know as well. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I will catch you in the next video. I'm out.